Welcome back. Thank you for hanging out with us once again. This is the one and only IT in the D show. I am your host, Bob Waltonspiel, hanging out with producer and co-host extraordinaire Randy Walker. Guest this week, Erik Wille. You might know him as the Chief Information Security Officer at American Axle. You might know him as one of the hosts of the Great Security Debate podcast, or you might just know him from your local corner bar. But we're super excited to talk to him about everything security focused. We're going to make fun of sales guys, and we're going to talk about his favorite topic, AI. You can follow us online, itinthed.com, and do us a favor, give us a like on the socials, subscribe to us everywhere fine podcasts are sold. We are booked once again for Urban Rest. You can find us on, if you want to meet us live, go to meetup.com/itinthed. Every third Thursday, we will be there. Great beer, kombucha, food trucks, and we have our own little room. So it's a very cool atmosphere for all of us, and nothing but positive reviews so far. What say you, Randy?
That's June 15th.
Yeah, because the first is on a Thursday, so we get it's a short month. So
it is.
Been good crowds lately. A lot of practitioners, a lot of couple recruiters, couple managers, good mix all around. So yeah, and a couple startups, people like new to the industry. So definitely a good time. Hope to see you out there. Erik, how they treating you, buddy?
Treating me well. Good. Life is good. Never a dull moment in security.
I was gonna say, how do you like? The age-old question is, what keeps you up at night, or how do you sleep at night? But candidly, like how that, like, it never stops. It never, it always comes at you. How do you not have gray hair right now, and you're not even that old yet?
It's what we tell everybody going into the field, that you have to be wired for it. That if you're going into it, number one, if you're going into it for the money, wrong. That's not to say there's not any in it, but it can be a rough life. It's one of those things that, that's why the question of what keeps you up at night is nothing really, right? Because we go into it expecting at some point that there's going to be long nights, long days. That's just what we signed up for, and it is what it is.
They say, you keep hearing nothing but there's a massive underemployment in the security industry. Is that, like, when you put out a rec and if you need somebody, is it hard to find people these days? Because I'm trying to assume on your side of the fence, what's it like to hire a technician in the security world?
Yeah, so there's a lot of debate around that. Are we trying to go after the wrong people? Is it just purely a numbers game that there's a shortage of people going into the field? And in all honesty, if we were to make the argument and all agree that there is a shortage of people, I think we're to blame for it. I think we were talking this, Dan, Brian, and I recently, that if you look at, and I think it was Forrester that actually had some good research that they put out, that essentially we're missing that kind of mid-tier of the security range because we create these astronomical requirements. You have to have 20 years of Kubernetes experience, and it hasn't been around that long, right?
Right.
We create this high hurdle to get into the industry, then we can't keep people in, and then we're all the people. Why aren't they there?
See, I grew up in a network server cloud world, right? I was selling cloud before it was called cloud, when it was shared hosting. And you had those tiers. There was server admin 1, 2, 3. There was server engineer 1, 2, 3. Then there became an architect. And I feel when you bring that up, that those tiers aren't necessarily for security. I feel like there's SOC and there's 1, 2, 3. Then you get into like security admin stuff. But there's, then you get into architecture and like the higher end. But yeah, you're right. That mid-level, what needs to happen there? Do they just need to re-tier what the requirement? Because I used to have plain and simple criteria for how to promote people, right? Have they done a project? Okay, now you're an engineer. If you're still doing tickets, you're still an admin, right? But if you're the best guy, you're a 3. You know what I mean? It was really delineated. Is that just not been developed yet?
So I think that still exists by and large, but the problem is there's so many different facets to security that if we try to create each one of those verticals in, cloud, within, you talk about AI, within traditional infrastructure, networking, pen testing, SOC operations, it's not scalable.
Red team, blue team, yeah.
Yeah, it's way too much. If you go just take a look at the map on all the different security certifications that are out there, all the different domains, and think about, all right, what if we create 5 levels within each of those? You can't fill those roles. And I think a piece of it too, that we're starting to look at the colleges that are turning out new employees. And we're also saying, you got to come out with a cyber degree. And in all honesty, I think that's doing a disservice to pulling people into security. I'll tell you, some of the best security people that I've come across, did not come up through security. They have some type of other acumen that they were able to build onto, and then we could teach them the security mindset.
See, is it so new in the education? Because when I was coming up, right, I went to college, started in 92. Oh my God, I just tipped my head how old I am. But I'll be damned if we didn't know more than the teachers did. And they would take a history teacher to have us teach networking when I was 11th grade. And then when we got into college, and I'm like, teach this damn class. Like, what do you, I'm paying you.
Right.
Is security that new where that's happening? Because I think like the Walshes of the world, they got it, right? They're hiring practitioners and they hire, they built their own SOC. But, when you go to like a Michigan State or, even the Central or an Eastern, are they, where are they getting their talent from?
I think they're starting to get it. So it started with some of the smaller ones. So I think when I first went through at Walsh, they were just becoming a center of excellence there. So that's the DoD NSA curriculum that we're set on the heels of that. I want to say Ferris did it, and there was a couple others, but we just haven't seen the growth at the bigger schools. And I was actually having a conversation with some students at Oakland University recently and talking about this. And this was one of the questions that came up that, hey, if I want to get into the cyber field, do I have to have a degree in cyber? And the answer is no. Pick something else and then move. We can get you into cyber.
But I think if you want to get into leadership, I think if you want to get into managerial, I think if you want to get into, getting a seat at the table, I think you have to. It's almost imperative, unless you're a wunderkind and you can work circle. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
who those people are the minute you meet them. So I just brought up a picture, and when you brought up the different layers of security, I had to see it for myself. And I know it's ever evolving, but it's the vendor landscape. Okay.
Oh my gosh!
Now, bear with
you must
me.
Have
right,
a big
bear
screen
with
if
me
you
right
could
now.
get
This
the
is
whole
gonna.
thing to fit.
What's that?
You must have a pretty big screen if you could get the whole thing to fit.
I got my 27s. Yeah, going. I got it. But I would bear with me. This is going to take a second. But you have, network security. That's broken into 4: network firewall, network monitoring, intrusion prevention, UTM, unified threat management. Endpoint security, endpoint prevention, endpoint detection response. Each one of them's got 20 to 30 vendors that are all in that space. You have application security. You have managed security service providers. You have web security. You have messaging security, risk and compliance, IoT, security operations, incident response. I don't want to keep going because this is mind numbing. Threat intelligence, data security, mobile security, identity and access, cloud security. Each one of those has 30, 40 little teeny logos crammed into it.
It's crazy.
And so basically what I'm looking at is you have a rep from, considering you're a bigger name company, being a tier 1 auto supplier in Detroit, you have a rep from every one of those companies that are calling you every week. There has to be 300 vendors on this page.
You get one of the greatest skills of a CISO is being able to manage a mailbox and voicemail. Finding creative ways to create filters.
So I've had this conversation a dozen times before, either with different CISOs or CIOs or CTOs and whatnot. Most of them say, if you call me, you're getting started, or it's basically it's in the toilet. Don't even bother. And if you're emailing me, it's probably going in the toilet.
It's true.
So obviously you have your friends, but is it all? And then here's my biggest thing that I hate more than anything, and you probably hate it worse, is being put on a drip campaign from someone you didn't ask to be. Did you get my last email? Have you received the email from 2 weeks ago? I would like to send you more information on.
The fact that you didn't respond to this email means that either you don't like me, or our product's not that good, or you don't work at that company. Yeah, it's almost.
So the problem is inside baseball. When you click it to delete it, it shows them that you opened it. So now you get put on that list, right? And it's this never-ending cycle. I call it of hell. Me being in sales all these years, I kind of yell at people. I'm like, please don't put customers on drips. Please don't do it. Please.
Yeah, we need to go back to the power of building relationships. I mean, if you look at it in the CISO community, Detroit's a pretty close-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. But if you think about it in the context, I don't know if you've ever read the book Crossing the Chasm, which I love. So it talks about the different, you've got kind of early adopters of new technology and late adopters. I'm not doing it justice, but it's a whole spectrum, right? that if you find those CISOs that everybody's connected with, are those early adopters, connect in with them. And then if it truly works, it'll start to trickle out by word of mouth behind the scenes.
When I was in the sim game, that was what I was trying to do, was let's find the 2 or 3 loudest ones, give it to them for 90 off, and then hope it works. And then hope it works.
Yeah, you create a beachhead.
I think I put that on LinkedIn once. It was like, build the relationship, solve the problem or find the problem, make it business relevant, and then pitch, then show product in that order. Like, you know what I mean? Nothing before it, you know, because again, if you don't trust people, I think that's the basis, the commonality of it is, you know, there's got to be a built trust. You got to know somebody.
Right.
So, I mean, so let me ask that, is how much is it, you get all this thrown at you, what's your are you going after like trusted peers and you're asking, what are you guys using for X? Are you doing a bake off with 5 POCs of stuff you like it because you've been messing with it? Like, I guess walk me through the process you use.
Yeah, so I would say it depends, right? So if it's a space that we definitely need a technology in, then we're probably going the traditional RFP bake off, going that route because we know we need something in that space. But I'll tell you, the vast majority of us, there's actually a Detroit CISO Slack that the majority of us communicate back and forth, and it's just chatter behind the scenes. Hey, I'm running into this problem. Have you guys seen this, or what solution are you using? And it's just the relationships that have been built.
Well, those are your peers. Those are the best of the, best of the best, and it makes sense because I'm, again, looking at this, I couldn't imagine like just to go through a sim bake off, and you have 17 different varieties of sim, right? And figuring out which one is which. And then kind of see, now here's the thing. I talked for a minute because like zero trust, in my opinion, used to be the most overused term in data security. I don't know if it kind of slowed down a little bit for AI now. It get the flavor of the month. But like, is anyone, in your opinion, doing zero trust like properly or any justice? I know there's like, it's more of a methodology than it is a product, and people selling product, I think, are out of their minds. That's just my take.
You're 100% correct. Right. I mean, we've heard those pitches that, hey, buy product X and you are zero trust. You have zero trust.
Right.
And that's not the way it works. Right. It's a journey. Is anybody fully doing it that I'm aware of? It's hard to say because there's so many, because it's a journey, because it's a mindset. There's so many different flavors of it and it all depends on kind of from a business standpoint, how we're each set up and the percentage we're into the cloud versus traditional, in our world, traditional manufacturing, what we're doing on the shop floor. So it really, really depends.
I think it's one of the things that got brought up today at work was we were talking about like, hey, they put this software in to find dead licenses and save like $5.5 million. And I'm like, and now the buzzword is you'll hear it probably. You probably heard it a couple of times, mainframe modernization. And all that means is taking those old ass applications, modernizing them and putting them in the cloud. But like now it's got a marketing spin. Wow, mainframe. Yeah, mainframe modernization. So now that we've gone there, let's go to AI, because that's been, all of a sudden November, we get hit with Chat GPT. And in December, my kid's writing their term paper using it. And I'm asking it pro wrestling questions because I'm an idiot. And now all of a sudden you have workshops and symposiums and the vendors are all over it. Is it as overhyped as zero trust was, or is this the new flavor of the month now going on?
So I would say, from my perspective, it is overhyped. I think, but we tend to do this from a security perspective, that all of a sudden something new comes into our purview. We go, oh shoot, we haven't researched this. We don't know this. It's the end of the world. So all of a sudden it's the worst thing ever. It's no different than, I think you and I might have had the conversation about when we went to cloud, right?
Yeah.
That everybody starts saying cloud, it'll be the downfall of everything. And it's just somebody else's computer sitting somewhere else. Is it cool? Yes, it's, this is one of the conversations that we're starting to have within organizations right now. What do we do with it? What's the impact? And certainly we've heard it come up from the board level. And, by and large, what are we talking about? Number one, there's a philosophical debate. Do we truly have AI? Not going there because that's a protracted conversation.
Right.
But we're talking about big data sets. And are we going to start seeing it come out in attacks? Sure. But the same techniques are being used by some of the same vendors that you just went through on that list. And from an organizational standpoint, honestly, our biggest concern is the same concern that we've had with the internet for a long time, that, hey, we have confidential and top secret data. Don't put it in a non-sanctioned web application. That's all ChatGPT is.
Yeah.
It's another non-sanctioned application.
That was the only cool use case. I think we talked about this too. The only cool use case I've seen so far is taking the massive encyclopedia, which is an auto owner's manual, and basically digesting it in a, I don't know behind the scenes, but then when you chat and say, hey, I need to know what's the light bulb in my, in my rear butt light bulb, what I'm at the store, and it'll spit out what, your parts, or like if you anything that you would have to read, you just ask it on an unneeded basis. To me, that's the coolest, function or use case I've seen for it. There's some, I'm talking strictly automotive, obviously, because that's your industry too.
Certainly.
But like, what colleges are going through right now, I know there's like, as soon as ChatGPT came out, they came out with anti-ChatGPT. So if you do what we used to do back in the day, you change a paragraph and then, it doesn't hit the scan. Right. You're right. You're nodding because
yeah. If any of my professors are listening, it's actually, so it's interesting with being in school right now, you're actually seeing different responses from different professors. That you have some that I would say are teaching some of the more traditional acumen, that are saying, don't use it, know the material. I don't want to see it come into the class. And then we've got one coming up that's on entrepreneurial elements, and it's embrace it. This is a new technology, use it. But I think the big thing that people have to realize when using this, it's not infallible. I remember watching a presentation where somebody was asking if it was a human, went through a whole long conversation. It said it was a human from the get-go, and then later on it denied that it even told anybody it was a human. So I feel like we've seen that play out in politics as well, but it's not infallible.
I saw the meme going around, like I guess I don't use it, but Snapchat has a AI functionality built into it now. And they'll say, where am I? And it'll answer, I don't know. But then you go, where's some pizza places near me? And they're like, oh, Little Caesars right there. Domino's is right there. So it's like, well, wait a minute. How did you know where I was? And it's like, well, I don't. Right. And it has this like semantical argument back and forth with itself because it doesn't want to admit to you. It's kind of like the RoboCop's, priorities: cannot shoot Dick Jones until you fire him, But it's like, that's kind of what they're built in with these ridiculous. I even asked, write the greatest movie script ever, and it won't let you. Like, it's getting like they're programming it to not give out copywritten materials. And
right.
Well, I used to write a blog called Don't Be That Guy. And I went on ChatGPT and I go, write a Don't Be That Guy blog. And it did. So I'm like, all right, that's officially the last blog I'm ever writing, because why bother at this point? Because it's basically the same shit it just took from me.
That's one of the interesting debates that we're going to have, right? On ownership on material that's coming from it. That if we're talking about either, ChatGPT that's bringing us back the regurgitation of data sets, or something else that's creating art or creating music or something, who actually owns it? Is it the inputs that are going into the engine, or is it the owner of the engine itself?
Yeah, and that's you brought an interesting discussion too with art, because everybody's saying now, draw Ric Flair eating a pizza in hell, and the AI will make this amazing picture, and you're like, dude, that's really good. And like, basically, it's whatever you imagine. Like, who owns that? Is it
right?
Can you even
if we're going to be concerned on any of those technologies that are coming out on that front, way more concerned with the deep fakes and the capabilities that are coming out there. Some of the video that's coming out, if you look at who was that? I think they've done some with Obama saying certain things. It's absolutely amazing and very hard to tell reality from creation.
So you're a podcaster. I've been doing this for 10 years. You've been doing it, pretty recently, but I pretty much have said every word known to man. You can basically, I've seen it already where you can type in something and it's using my voice, and you can pretty much make me say anything. Knock on wood that no one ever makes me say something bad, because but you're right with the politics thing. There was one, I remember, it was a deep fake of Biden, and they said that was a deep fake. I think it was on Rogan, and he's like, that's a deep fake. Why? his eyes never blinked. Like that was the one thing the deepfake didn't do, was make him blink his eyes. And they're like, watch, and his eyes were just like, Johnny Cash cocaine eyes, never blinked. And we're like, is that real? It's like, yeah, we're gonna have to deal with that. And then like, what does that do for Hollywood now? Because you can make Luke Skywalker look at the last iteration of The Mandalorian when Luke Skywalker was on there. That looked really good.
It's really well done.
Right. And like, it's only going to get better. That's the scary thing. So speaking of your podcast, you host a kind of a cool podcast, a couple industry vets, the Great Security Debate. And it's with my buddy Brian Schneebly and then Daniel Alaya. Now when you talk about security debate, are you talking about the same crap I brought up earlier, or are you guys getting in the weeds? Like I'm sure with you guys being all practitioners, you're getting in the weeds. But what's some of the stuff you guys are bringing up?
Yeah, so I would say it's all over the board. I mean, as we think about some of our topics, it's really for us got to be something that we're willing to take up opposing views. Now, is it perfect? Do we always do it? No, because there's certain topics that behind the scenes we're all pretty aligned. Is where we kind of started on the hiring issues that we're having with the skill sets, the what's coming out, job recs that are coming out from HR that doesn't really understand security. I think we're all aligned, and we try to force ourselves to take different elements, but our whole thing is we try not to get too deep in the weeds and too technical. Really, as we think about the audience, this all started. Gosh, this was actually pre-COVID at a Vanta dinner. The three of us, they allowed us to sit at a dinner table. Mistake number one, and we're like, wow, this conversation was really, really cool. We could do this more frequently, and we could record it, and we can put it out. And Dan, just being the technical wizard that he is like, all right, I can run with that and create it, and just kind of off and running. So it was really just our way of connecting the three of us, having relevant conversations, and then putting it out there. If people want to listen, cool. If not, we still had fun having that conversation.
And that was the thing we always talked about with podcasting was it's bowling night. It was a chance to get, my buddies together. It was a chance to, when we used to do in the studio, we'd have a couple pre-drinks. We'd talk about everything, and it was just fun. It was like golf league. You know what I mean? People that think of it otherwise, like I'm going to go into this and make a bunch of money. Like you're doing it wrong. Like it's, you got to be passionate about it. And that, I talked to Randy. I'm like, I've been doing this for 10 years. Once in a while I get pod fade, and I didn't think it would ever hit me because I'm like the idiot that doesn't stop talking ever. But like, so how do you guys keep finding topics? Is it bar conversations? You're just recording them, or is that kind of, are you trying to
essentially what it is? Yeah. I would tell you very few times have we gone in beforehand and picked a topic. Usually we'll spend 10, 15 minutes just BSing together. And because of that, something comes to light. It's either something that's going on that one of us is working on, or some article we read or something, and that just kicks it off and it gets running. Or with Brian, if you mention auto, food, or there's a couple of topics that once you hit on there, you've got 3 or 4 days worth of material.
My worst thing is when we talk about when I was a kid, and we start talking about, I could talk for hours on Commodore PETs and 300 baud modems and what I called hacking, which was when you hit control run stop 3 times and it open up the code, and then turning it to potty words and then resaving it and then getting the whole class in trouble in 5th grade. Like I could tell those stories. There should be an old timers computer show or just literally we're just telling those old stories. Like that one time I wrote a freak code program that wrote all night and I called the 248 BBS. My dad got a $2,000 bill, but I think reminiscing, that's I guess one of the great parts of this profession.
I'm hearing an opportunity there because ironically, that's actually how I got my first job. Was connecting to the internet because at the time dialing Flint, and gosh, I was probably 14, had no clue what long distance calls were. Racked up a pretty sizable phone bill, and there was definitely an angry parent when that bill came in and the words, "You're coming to work with me." Okay.
Yeah, mine was the 7 code that was like AT&T employee codes when they went to pay phones. And we wrote a program that could dialed out 10,000 times. Then it won the ones that worked. It just used random. The ones that worked, it printed off on a sheet of paper. I think we took it from the Anarchist Cookbook or some crap on whatever, some BBS we found, and there was some script kiddie program. So I got to ask you a question. Like, one of the things is we always got really involved in kind of jobs and in recruiting, and that was a big part of IT in the day back in the pink slip parties and all that. Let's say we got I don't want to say a kid, but like, a kid that just came out of like the boot camp, cyber boot, came out of maybe the U of M has a really good like a year-long program, came out like my take is sit at the desk for 2 years, figure out what you like, and then certify in that stuff and then keep growing. Every 3 years, move up or out, like in terms of getting promoted, learning a new skill, and then I guess that's my take. I'm curious what your take is, like just to break in cybersecurity, and B, kind of how to grow within.
Yeah, so I think the amazing thing about cybersecurity is how reachable it is. That if you look at the amount of material that's put out there that you can read, you can learn, you can do on your own. I mean, think about, just take the pen testing side of it, right? Think of how many different sandbox VMs that you can download, Metasploitable or any of those, that you can start just learning some of the skills and doing some of the testing yourself and building that acumen. And a piece of that, I think, is, as we talked about before, there's so many different facets to security. You really have to dabble in a bunch of them to figure out where you want to play. Do you want to be on the DevSec side? Do you want to be on the pen testing side? Then once you figure that out, then you can start charting a path forward. And I think that's key, because some of the feedback that I would give to somebody coming up, you have to have some inkling of where you want to head. That we are a very open community that love to network, love to connect, push people forward, but somebody else can't champion your career. You have to have an understanding of somewhere on your path, and then we can help propel you along the way.
So this is the one thing I don't know. Like I always say, if you're a dev, make sure you come to the table with a Git that you can send to the recruiter and the hiring manager. If you're a networking person, make sure you have some like a home lab and Raspberry Pi and you're doing something cool. Or if you're a cloud person, make sure you have a bunch of sandboxes things that you built. Well, how about for security? Like obviously you don't want to come to the table going, well, I cracked into blah, blah, blah. What should they come to the table with on that side of the fence?
I think you really have some of the same things: creating the sandbox, creating technologies, configuring technologies, breaking down. I think it's less about the actual application or infrastructure you stand up. It's more about the mindset that you did it, that you created a lab, that you built something. I mean, I've still got kind of a small server farm here that I'm spinning up VMs, playing with different things. I think it's one of the best ways to keep sharp. And it shows as we go back to the mindset of technologists that are in security, it's because we want to understand something to look at it at a different angle. And I think as you start to build up some of those sandboxes and play with technology, it lends itself very well to really any path within security.
So that was one of the things I got called out on. I was speaking on a panel and I said, at one point I was hiring techs in my life. And I was saying, I really want you to be engulfed in nerd culture. I want to know that you're doing something cool in your house. I want to know that you're into the sci-fi movies. And I want to know that like, this isn't, it's actually kind of a ... extension of your life, like what you're doing. Cause like, you're going to be happy every day. Right. And I got completely contradicted going, no, I want them to come in from 9 to 5 and do the best job possible and plug out. And I go, I kind of frowned on that too. And I said, I'm just curious to what you thought. Cause they said there's no right answer to that. And I question it, but it sticks in the back of my mind every day because it's like, should I question my thinking on that?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, and it's kind of how you opened up on the question of what keeps you up at night, right? That we have to find ways to have fun in security, because we know at some point there is no untouchable company. Let's just all agree on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So at some point we are going to be spending a lot of time together going through something that just happened, trying to figure out how do we stop it and how do we learn from it. And part of that is you have to have fun, build that camaraderie beforehand. I'm telling you, if it's a 9 to 5 job, you're just not going to have the buy-in for the team. You're back to the just punching a card, slide down the dinosaur and out.
I agree 1,000%. And that's the thing, Eric. It's like, I don't like, everyone always says, we don't want to be in the paper. Just make sure like your boss or your boss's boss or someone that says, just don't let us get in the paper. But then we went back and we were kind of going over all the major breaches that happened over the last 5-8 years. Wendy's, Target, Home Depot, the POS systems, right? And not one of them took a blip in sales hit. And I'm kind of like, is it really, no one's stopping going to Target because he heard they got hit, because they figured there's a lot of smart people that just fixed it and they're going to be fine tomorrow. So I'm kind of like, it's this weird double-edged sword. Like, what say you on that? Because again, I haven't seen anyone take a hit in terms of the biggest breach of the Visa. Like, think about Sony. Like, no one's taking a hit.
Yeah, it's ironically, that's actually a conversation we were having today in the office. A buddy of mine, his wife, I think she was doing a master's degree in finance or something, but that she wrote a paper on that she did the research on the companies.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's short-term blips that we see, but over the long run, the effect is negligible, if even there at all. But from my perspective, I think that a lot of that lends back to more of a US-centric society, in that we are fickle, right? You talk about zero trust disappear. Why? Because we're focused on AI. I think the same thing happens in the stock market, that, all right, we're past that breach. Or it might be the mentality of, hey, my favorite restaurant got shut down because it didn't pass the food inspection, but once it's back up, it's probably one of the safest restaurants to eat at because it's under scrutiny.
But that was like Tyler. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think where some of that's going to change, though, and what we got to continue to focus on is internationally, because as we start looking at some of the evolving privacy laws, specifically Europe, I think, and some of the hits that they're going to land on some of these companies, I think they are going to truly do some damage to companies that aren't playing by the rules that they want them to play by. And I think that's where it's really going to matter.
Well, that was a couple of things that, talking to my security friends, they had, their life got turned upside down. I didn't mean to Will Smith you there, but like when the English, the GDPR, or what, I forget the damn acronym. Is that what it is? Their privacy laws. GDPR. Thank you. When that happened, everybody had to retool everything. And then when they got cyber insurance, and then they had the mandated check boxes, and then I got calls from a couple of my buddies going, dude, I got to buy EDR. Who should I look at? Or dude, I got to buy, SIM. Who should I look at? We're like, it's like some small tool shop, 200 employees, but if they wanted cyber insurance, they forced them to buy this crap. So it's almost like, are you trying to be proactive, or are you trying to check a box?
Yeah, it's the whole prescriptive security frameworks that are coming out of cyber insurance that are not going to curb the field the way they think they are.
Well, that industry, I remember we talked. Randy, were you producing the show yet? When I was like the first guy that was selling it in town, and I was just floored.
Sounds familiar, but
I was like, I reminded me of my buddy Tad in like 96, where he's like, dude, the internet's like, e-commerce is a fad. The internet, it's not going to take off. And we're like, are you insane? And it reminded me of that, where I'm looking at this guy going, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And now it's like a, multi-billion-dollar industry. What the hell do I know? So what do you when you're not when you're not going to karate, when you're not working, when you're not thinking about work, when you're not podcasting, like what are you watching these days? What's good?
Ted Lasso is probably number one.
Fantastic, isn't it?
It is such a good show.
Do you know what's weird? Did you see the backlash on season 3 online? I try not to watch or read anything. Apparently somebody was up in arms about season 3, and I'm like,
isn't that the age we're in? Somebody's always up in arms about something.
I know. And I'm watching it going, this is one of the most brilliant written shows I've ever watched. And I'm like,
it's so well done.
See, okay, so my thing is 6 people bitch about it on Twitter, and then BuzzFeed picks it up because it's kind of controversial, and then they get 2 billion clicks, and then NBC will pick it up because that got picked up, and then now it's news, but it was really only 6 people. Like that's
right.
That's welcome to news in 2023.
The age of professional offended people.
Right. See, now you're not as old as me, but I grew up on Ultraman, and Netflix has a fantastic anime series, and season 3 just dropped, and I have not seen it yet. So that's going to be my week this weekend, is to catch up on Ultraman.
Nice. Is that going to be one of those binge moments? Get through all of them?
No, because they don't leave them. Like there was, what did we just watch? Where like the last one, like the agent, night agent.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Oh, that's fantastic. But they end every one where like me and my wife look at each other and we're like, God damn it, we have to watch another one. Like they hang you. They're so good at hanging you up at the last, right at the end. Like, all right, one more. We'll just go to bed at 1. We'll be fine tomorrow. Like that's what it came. And we blew through it in a week.
Nice.
That's the thing. Like we used to just watch movies. Now we have to watch 14-hour movies broken up into 12 episodes, and we want more. Give me more.
That's what's amazing. I mean, think about how many different. Gosh, I don't even want to go through how many different streaming services we have, but we've caught ourselves a couple nights that we get through. Watch Ted Lasso, watch Succession, and I think Marvelous Miss Maisel's in there, and there's a couple others that we chunk through those, and then we're, oh shit, what are we going to watch?
Yeah.
We have more content than we've ever had at any other time, and yet the dissatisfaction with the amount of content we have because we can't find something else to watch. It's just staggering.
Did you? This is a crazy stat, blew my mind. The I Love Lucy documentary that was on, I believe it was on Amazon Prime, and the whole stink was about her checking the box that she was a communist, and the NBC crew had to like go on a apology tour and tell the crowd, because the crowd was beside themselves, and she didn't know. She was just like, whatever. That was, I think my dad checked that. I don't even know. I haven't voted in 30 years. But the quote was that blew my mind was 63 million people tune into I Love Lucy every whatever night. And I'm thinking about that going, God, the Super Bowl only gets 22 or 5 million,
That's crazy.
63 million people watched a sitcom, back in those days, because you only had 4 channels.
It's true. It's a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah. So we're absolutely, that's why I hate that. I watched the worst movie I've ever watched. We're running out of so many ideas. They had to remake House Party, which was one of my favorite movies of all time from 1990. And they absolutely bastardized it. And I was so angry. I actually went to IMDb and I wrote a 1-star review. The first time I've ever reviewed anything like that. I was so angry. Like, I'll show you.
Speaking of, don't be that guy.
I know. I was so angry. I'm like, worst movie ever. I was totally comic book guy too. Worst movie ever. So anyway, hey, we can find Erik. Look up the Great Security Debate Podcast. We'll put it in the show notes. And we sincerely appreciate your time and your sense of humor and all that good stuff. But definitely appreciate your time. So Erik, Wille, American Axle, Chief Information Security Officer, appreciate it. So we're going to wrap things up for this episode of the IT and the D Show. On behalf of Bob and Randy, do us all a favor. Drink up your drinks. Get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it.